Vikings, one of the most mysterious and romanticized communities in human history. Their name evokes images of fearless seafarers, formidable warriors, and skilled explorers of new lands. But who were they really? And what is their true story? Viking is not a nationality, but rather a way of life and a profession. The term encompassed people from various Scandinavian nations, Norwegians, Swedes, and Danes. Vikings did not represent a single ethnic group, but rather a community, united by a spirit of adventure and seafaring. Their story begins in the late 8th century with the start of the Viking Age, when the first raids on Britain and other European lands became known to the world. Their activities included piracy, looting, and naval expeditions. Most Vikings were ordinary farmers, Norwegians, Swedes, Danes. But when life became difficult, many would leave their peaceful pursuits, gather a band of warriors, and set off on their longships in search of plunder. Upon returning, they would once again become peaceful farmers. The horned helmets are a 19th century romantic invention. Real combat helmets were streamlined and designed for protection, not decoration. Horned headgear was used only in ritual ceremonies. Vikings lacked modern medicines but found inventive ways to treat ailments. For example, they gave onion broth to wounded individuals and then checked if the smell was detectable through the wound. If so, it indicated intestinal damage. Vikings loved testing their endurance. One of their favorite games was endurance swimming. Men would dive and try to hold their opponent's head underwater. The most resilient would win. Contrary to stereotypes, Vikings paid attention to hygiene. They bathed every Saturday, known as Laundry Day, and meticulously cared for their hair, nails, and teeth. Cleanliness helped them make a good impression, especially on women. Archaeological studies have shown that Vikings were plagued by parasites. Traces of helminths have been found in their latrines, which may have impacted their health and evolution. For example, mutations of the A1AT gene are linked to lung diseases. The stories of Sister Ebba from Coldingham illustrate that women often became victims of raids. Vikings respected their own women but treated captives from other peoples harshly. They would seize settlements, often burn houses, and abduct inhabitants who could later be used as slaves. Despite this, Vikings also maintained cultural and trade relations with other peoples, making their role in history more complex and contradictory. Many enthusiasts of Scandinavian history have heard of warlike names and nicknames like Eric the Red or Ivar the Boneless, but not all warriors were so fortunate with names. Historian Paul Peterson from the University of Minnesota came across far less flattering nicknames: Eystein the Smelly, Aiden the Bald, Thorstein the Unlucky, Ulf the Cross-Eyed. Sometimes nicknames were given posthumously, like Njal the Burnt, who went mad with grief after enemies burned his house to the ground. Vikings were masters of deception. They resold narwhal tusks, passing them off as unicorn horns, and made fortunes from this. Medieval Europe eagerly believed in the magical properties of these artifacts. Vikings carved patterns into their teeth to appear more intimidating in battle. This tradition was likely borrowed from other peoples with whom they had contact. Vikings favored single-edged axes, which served as both weapons and tools. Their spears were another versatile weapon, accessible to every warrior. Typical Viking dwellings, longhouses, were not comfortable. Under the same roof as the people lived animals, and the absence of windows created a heavy atmosphere. Despite this, these houses were warm and protected against the harsh climate. Scandinavians used cosmetics, but they were dangerous to health. Mixtures of lead and other toxic components caused poisoning, which could affect their appearance and health. There was no uniform appearance among Vikings. They were not exceptionally tall. Men averaged about 172 centimeters, women 158 centimeters. Hair color ranged from blonde to red and dark shades. Harsh customs sometimes led to absurd deaths. For instance, Jarl Sigurd the Mighty died from an infection caused by a scratch from a dead enemy's tooth. This highlights the importance of treating wounds, even in the heat of battle. Research suggests that Vikings might have used calcite crystals for navigation on cloudy days. These sunstones helped them determine the sun's position even through thick layers of clouds, making them great seafarers. Vikings had special symbols that were applied to weapons or armor to charm them. One such symbol was the Eggeskjalmur, believed to bring invulnerability and instill fear in enemies. Few people know that Vikings actively developed trade. They established connections with distant lands such as Byzantium and the Middle East. Their trade routes spanned vast distances, and goods included furs, weapons, amber, and even slaves. Surprisingly, Vikings were the first Europeans to set foot in North America. Leif Erikson, son of Eric the Red, discovered Vinland, likely part of modern Newfoundland, 500 years before Columbus's voyage. This proves their exceptional seafaring skills. Another interesting feature was their approach to democracy. Vikings had things, assemblies of free people where important issues were discussed and decided. This precursor to Parliament highlights their inclination toward collective governance. Interestingly, Vikings used a special form of verse known as skaldic poetry. Their poets, or skalds, created intricate poems with multi-layered metaphors, praising warriors, gods, and great deeds. Few know that Vikings possessed advanced blacksmithing technologies. They were the first in Europe to use improved iron, which made their swords strong and flexible. Vikings also loved to adorn their ships with carved dragon heads. These decorations not only impressed enemies, but also, according to the Vikings, protected them from evil spirits at sea. Viking life was full of paradoxes. They combined brutality with ingenuity, piracy with hard work, and dirty raids with cleanliness. These Northerners left an indelible mark on history and continue to inspire us to explore their multifaceted culture. We would love your comments and suggestions to make our materials even more engaging. Subscribe to avoid missing new content.